Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Ben, this is Books with Genghis Khan, and today I have for you my February reading wrap-up. And it was one of the craziest reading months in my life. So my wife has been away on the other side of the world visiting her family, so I've had a lot of alone time. I've changed roles at my job, have kind of a lot to do for work, so I've been in a weird mental space, and books have been just my refuge. And I feel like I've been a little more just open to intense experiences with my reads recently. And I will go a long time. Some months I don't try any new authors. I'm just continuing series or returning to known favorite authors. This month I read 4 new authors, maybe a new favorite book of all time, a few new favorite authors that I can't wait to read more from, some new series I've started. So it was a crazy month. I'll try to keep it brief so that this wrap up doesn't take too long. But man, I have a lot to gush about. So here we go. I started off this month, it seems like a year ago, finishing up my reread, my re-listen to the Dungeon Crawler Carl books by Matt Dinniman. So this was The Eye of the Bedlam Bride, Dungeon Crawler Carl book 6, and it was great for the second time. This just gave us a new setting, kind of slowed things down a bit, which was nice after a really fast-paced bunch of books previously leading up to this. And the setting felt cool, the new kind of level mechanics were interesting to me. But then throughout this book, there were 3 just humongous, tense action set pieces that were just bonkers, off-the-wall crazy. And Dinniman injects these really intense emotional beats throughout these action sequences, just some of the best action sequences I've ever read, and I am just so looking forward to the next book, which has been setting up to be this kind of main fulcrum point of the series, and I think it might be huge, kind of like changes in Dresden Files, like something like that we've been building towards. So I can't wait for whenever that book's out later this year, or maybe next year, we'll see. Man, I love speculative fiction. The fact that I can go from just spending time with a rambunctious talking cat to more of the intellectual science fiction of Adrian Tchaikovsky with Children of Memory. So I had just finished up reading this one. I didn't love the audiobook for it. This is a more kind of lyrical, abstract kind of read, so it worked better for me in print. So I was listening to I, the Bedlam Bride, finishing up this one in print, and this one had a really cool reveal as part of the ending that recontextualized the whole book. And yeah, I really liked that. And the read, as long as you go into it knowing it's going to be different from Children of Time, that one was much more of a fast-paced, plot-focused roller coaster ride. This one is more of a meditation on what it means to be sentient and the nature of identity. And it just asks some really interesting questions, explores them a few different ways that felt really new and interesting to me. So yeah, this felt more classic ideas-based sci-fi, much more so than Children of Time. And this series has kind of been going in that direction with each book. And yeah, solid book. I wasn't as gripped to it as Children of Time, so I gave this one 4 stars, but still a really worthwhile read. And then on a whim, I picked up my first Blake Crouch book, Dark Matter. I'd seen that the TV show adaptation was maybe going to be coming out soon, and I wanted to read the book before I checked that out. Saw some other people reading it, and so I've been wanting to try it for a while, and I ended up having a blast with it. I read it over the course of just 2 days, and I couldn't put it down. It was a real just sci-fi thriller kind of adventure that just every chapter just left a cliffhanger, had me wanting to continue. And it had some emotional depth to it as well. The thought experiment at its core is something I'm really interested in thinking about, often just on my own, about what could happen if I'd made different choices and branching off into different universes and versions of me and how we'd be similar or different from each other. This explores that, and just a really great ride. And slim book, and sometimes these more popcorny reads, but that still had some emotional heft to them, is exactly what I want. And so that was a great one. Easy 5 stars for how gripped I was. I feel like it hasn't left too much of an impact on my memory, but certainly a fun read while I was doing it. Next, it was time for me to try another new author that I've been meaning to try for years, and that is Guy Gavriel Kay, since John at Talking Story and Christopher Navo wrote me in for a buddy read of first-time GGK readers, and I picked this book up and was blown away by the prologue. The writing was elegant. It was more beautiful and just able to evoke some emotion out of me so quickly, more so than basically anything I've ever read in the past, from literary fiction all through modern fantasy and sci-fi. And I was so taken with this, but this particular paperback that I had is printed in heavily bolded print. Don't know if you can see that, but it was not fun for me to actually read from this. And the writing was not dense, I would say, but more elegantly constructed than I'm used to. And so the audiobook wasn't really clicking at the beginning. I really wanted to spend my time with it in print, but this print version wasn't really working for me. So I was just starting this, but realized I needed to find another copy to really give this book the real full attention it deserved without anything getting in my way of enjoying it. So I kind of put that off to the side and searched for some other things that could go quick and be lighter, and still I was trying to go through that a little bit. And so I picked up a new series that had been on my radar for a while. That's the Alex Verus urban fantasy series by Benedict Jacka. And I've really only read through the Dresden Files, my main urban fantasy. I tried the one by Butcher's Son, and that was okay, but I've been wanting to find more that I click with, and I ended up really liking this one. It's set in London, and it's a lot of the kind of setup seems similar to the Dresden Files, and it seems directly inspired, like that's his main influence. And he even makes a joke, the main character does, about a wizard in Chicago who's in the phone book. And so Jack is acknowledging his main influence. But there's certain things about this series and the read which make it very, very different from reading the Dresden Files. First, the main character that you're with, Alex Verus, is very serious. He doesn't have this real sarcastic side that Dresden has. He's not making pop culture references and joking around all the time. So the books don't have that same tone. And then the mages in this world really only have one power, and Alex Verus's power is future sight. So that's all he can do. Besides using magical objects, he can peek into the future and see if he does something, if he moves in a certain way, if he takes a certain action, he can then follow that thread and see what will occur. And he has the ability to kind of look at all different possibilities, and he can essentially just go different places he hasn't been in his mind and follow the effects of things. And this gives him a lot of really awesome kind of decision-making power and the ability for stealth. He can see if he moves a certain way, people won't notice him. And so it's a really cool power that Jacka explores here, and that I really haven't spent time with before in all of my other fantasy reads. And we get inside Jacka's mind, so sometimes we are with him as he's seeing these possible futures. Other times, Jack is a little more vague, and so we're surprised at maybe what he saw and then what ends up playing out. So I really liked how Jacka handles the magic, and that made it really interesting. It's also a very just small-scale, focused kind of read with accessible prose. It just flies by. There's a small cast. There's not much world building to get a handle on. We get drips of the lore and the history of this world and kind of the mage politics along the way. And so I can see this becoming a more epic scale story as the series goes on. But like Dresden Files, it starts very small scale with just a few characters, maybe one little mystery at the heart of these books. And I did the first two kind of back to back. And I think I gave 4 stars to both of them. And I am looking forward to this opening up a bit because the small cast, especially in book 2, Cursed, there's so few just side characters established so far, and only a few people ever introduced in each book that could possibly be the antagonists. And so there was not much that was surprising. I always felt like I could predict, like, oh, this ally or frenemy is going to show up and save Verus at this moment. And it usually did happen. And it was pretty clear who the antagonists were. So I wouldn't go into these first few books thinking that you're going to find like these really intense mysteries that you can't figure out what's going to go on. But it's more about, I think, establishing the main character, who is very interesting, he's very intelligent, and he's kind of an outcast in mage society. And it's about following this character, seeing some of the relationships he's forming with some new allies and friends, and dealing with really cool magic that leads to some really tense, suspenseful action scenes as well. So I was very impressed by these, and I am looking forward to continuing for sure. While I was reading the first two Alex Verus books, I took a trip to a local used bookstore and came across this mass market paperback of A Song for Arbonne. And I just hit the jackpot with that. That was exactly what I was hoping to find, because it actually had normal print and I could just dig in to A Song for Arbonne. And later, after I finished, I sought out the hardcover for that great cover. But this read ended up being extremely special. It might be my new favorite book of all time. I've never experienced this combination of beautiful writing and imagery that was evoking all these emotions in me throughout, and the plotting that kind of just gripped me from start to finish. This political plot, which I cared so much about, as how it was playing out, was always surprising at every turn. And these really deep, nuanced characters, both the POVs and side characters, I found myself getting so attached to all these different characters so quickly. And so this just combination of things that ended up, by the end, I finished out the book, probably the last 150 pages in just one sitting over just a marathon reading session. And man, I was getting so emotional throughout that whole final act of the book and the falling action. It was bringing out emotion in me that I had not felt since 2007, when I just finished high school, and it was the summer and I was going off to college soon, and I read Harry Potter 7 when it came out, and it kind of a read that marked the end of my childhood. I have not had that emotional of an experience with a book since then. And so, man, I was having trouble reading at the end because my eyes were welling up, and I had to take some breaks and think, what in the world is going on here? I was happy my wife wasn't around to see this going on. It had me, this read just had me relating to things that were happening in my own life, and just unrequited love from my youth, or thinking about missing my own wife and wishing for the romance of that, and the thinking about the beauty of the world and of art, and the wonderful things that can really help us transcend our realities here and the physical realm. And this had me just entranced from start to finish. And I had high expectations for Guy Gavriel Kay going into this, but I never expected to be this touched by the writing. It's just so beautiful yet accessible. I never found it difficult to read. He wasn't using tons of really uncommon words, but through his word choice and just maybe the uncommon sentence structures and rhythms, it gave the book a timeless quality. And this is kind of set in a version of medieval southern France, and I was really transported there to that time, and just a complete immersion in a very beautiful time and place, and just carried along, and was really gripped by the plot, though. That was what I also did not expect, that this is one of the best political plots I've ever read, where I understood all the stakes and the players involved. There weren't too many things to keep track of, but I also cared about everyone involved, and didn't want bad things to come to Arbonne when nations are going to be invaded or threatened and being taken over by other places. Usually I care about that in series because of the main characters involved, and I don't want the bad things to happen to them or their countries to get taken over for what it would mean to them. But here, Kay established the setting of Arbonne as this living, vibrant place that is precious, where songwriting and music and love are these really treasured things. And I did not want this place to be conquered and to be soiled by this kind of patriarchal state to the north that's threatening it. And just the window into this story is this mercenary soldier that we meet at the beginning, who is full of surprises, and I could not have loved this more. It was so personal, and just what a wonderful, full, epic journey I went on in one standalone book. Usually, you can only go on that journey over the course of a long series, but I got it here in just one, not even crazily chunky novel. And I just really am in awe of what Guy Gavriel Kay was able to do here. And a perfect read for me in every way. And if you want to see detailed thoughts about this book and spoiler thoughts about character arcs and plot points, then check out the live chat that I did just this past weekend with Christopher Navo and John from Talking Story, where we just all gushed about this book and broke down on the themes, and John and Chris were so eloquent talking about all the themes. And so yeah, if you're interested in our take on that, we did have a non-spoiler section for maybe the first 30 minutes until we get into the spoiler talk. So that is in the live section on my channel. Man, how do you follow up an all-time great read and somehow, some way, the stars aligned where I just found the perfect thing to follow that up because it was so different. And I want to thank Kyle from Read by Kyle for suggesting this as a buddy read, because it's something he's been wanting to read, but no one else has had it or been wanting to read it because it's a pretty unknown recent fantasy series. And that is the Empire of Salt trilogy by Con Gulden. And one of the reasons I think it's so unknown is that his publisher, who he normally does really popular historical fiction, wanted him to publish it under a pseudonym. So it's published under C.F. Gulden, and it's this completed fantasy trilogy published between 2017 and 2019, and I've never heard anyone say anything about it. I'd not read one word about it, heard anyone talk about it, and so I went into this read with Darien, and then Shang, Book 2, Book 3, The Sword Saint, knowing nothing. And I think it's the first time I've gone into a read having read or heard nothing about it. Maybe the first time in 6 years since I've really gotten into the fantasy sci-fi community online and on BookTube. And it was so refreshing. I had no clue what to expect going into this, and I was so engaged from start to end. Just, this is so quirky and unpredictable and just always throwing curveballs at you that you did not expect. It's so voice-filled. The first time I really had a book or a series to compare to The First Law, I think, ever, that kind of matches Abercrombie in how he gives really fun, distinctive, personality-filled voices to all the different POVs. So it felt kind of similar to reading First Law, except that these are so fast-paced. They're all slim books between 300 and 400 pages. They took no time to read. They flew by. There's not long kind of establishing sections at the beginning of these. Just we get swept up into important events, action scenes very quickly, and then almost every chapter has an interesting, engaging scene, something unpredictable going on. So these are the fastest paced epic fantasy books I've ever read, and each of them even felt like a really satisfying self-contained story on its own. It's not like just one story split up into 3 volumes. Each one of these books has a really complete plot arc, and then left me in a place where I have no clue where he's going to take it. And man, where he ended up taking it in books 2 and 3 was so cool. And this, to give you a sense for what this is, I don't want to give too much away about it. But like I said, it's very Abercrombie-esque in how voice-filled it is with these different POVs. But it's not grimdark. There's a very hopeful bent to the series, and a lot of the characters are good people, are trying to do good. They're kind of misfits and outcasts, and a lot of them are foreigners in the city of Darien. And there's not a lot of world building to get a handle on. It seems like it's taking place in kind of just like an alternate version of Earth. And Gulden just is not throwing lots of like political world building at you or geographic. Like, you are basically in this city, which seems like an early modern version of London. And that's the main setting. And it's just about the politics of this city and some tense crises that the city's undergoing over the course of just a few years. And the city is controlled by 12 families, and you think, oh, it's going to be typical kind of immoral, greedy nobles who control the politics of the city. But no, there's so much nuance in all of the adult characters, both the protagonists and the side characters. They act with surprising humanity and grace and honor, sometimes selfishness and greed, but not nearly as much as in the typical epic fantasy series. And yeah, it's just everything about it was surprising and interesting. And so I grew very attached to a lot of the characters in here. The setting, too, I grew attached to. And so when it's threatened, just like in Song for Arbonne, I really cared about the outcome, both for the characters and for the place. And then in book 2, we expand the world building a little bit to another city off to the east in Shang, which is kind of East Asian inspired, and there the culture is so different, and it's about certain characters who end up going to Darien and the experience of the clash of cultures and what it's like to grow attached to a new place. And I've done some traveling in my life and lived abroad and had a lot of similar experiences where I've really grown personally attached to a new place and come to love and respect certain parts of it, even if it's different from the culture I grew up in. And that's a real theme at the heart of this series. Man, I adored this series. It was just fun. There's so much fun magic in there. Different characters have different kind of individual magical abilities. And there's also a lot of magical artifacts that play really cool roles in these big action set pieces that end each of the books, and even in the third book, that are spread kind of throughout. And the magic is just so creative. I feel like Eagledon just let his imagination fly. Like, I was imagining that for the first 20 years of his publishing career, he had to stick to historical realism, and that he'd just been waiting for this moment for those shackles to come off of his imagination. And he just threw so many interesting, fun, magical abilities in here that played central roles in the plot and that came to the forefront at critical moments in really satisfying ways. And yeah, just so much fun. This series breezed by. If you want something with the kind of personality, the voice, with some humor in it too of Joe Abercrombie, but something not as grimdark and not as chunky too. It's just 3 short books. Each of them tell a satisfying, contained story, but over the course of the series, you really just get that full epic scale story with closure. So yeah, what a wonderful little fantasy trilogy by Con Eagledon. That's the Empire of Salt trilogy, something that I really would love for more people to read and try out, because they were so easy to really get engaged with and get into and sink into. Just almost no energy to really get hooked by these books. So yeah, great one, and that finale especially really hit hard. So I think I gave all of them 5 stars, but this finale was something truly special. Oh wow, that brought me to the end of my month, and I read a lot of great books. In other months, maybe Dark Matter or The Sword Saint would have been an easy choice for book of the month. But it didn't have to. If it didn't have to go up against one of the greatest reads of my life, A Song for Arbonne, that is my book of the month for February, maybe book of my life that I am going to treasure and look forward to returning to, hopefully again in the future. But I do want to check out all of Guy Gavriquet's other books, really see what he's got going on, more of his ideas and settings before I return back to this one, because I think I have a new favorite author, but a lot of new favorite authors, I think, from this month. So it made it really exciting. So that was my February. Let me know some of your favorite reads. Is there anything here you're excited to try after hearing about them? And yeah, I'll catch you later.